The dog wouldn't leave the baby alone until the parents checked the camera. Every parent knows that sinking feeling, the moment something doesn't seem right, but you can't quite put your finger on why. For one young couple, that moment came on an otherwise ordinary Tuesday morning, when their golden retriever, Bear, simply would not stop hovering near the baby's crib. He wasn't barking, he wasn't growling, he was just there, pressing his nose gently against the wooden slats, pacing slowly, whimpering under his breath, over and over again, all morning long. The parents tried everything. They called him away, they gave him treats, they even moved his bed to the other side of the room. But within minutes, sometimes seconds, Bear was right back at the crib, staring intensely at baby Emma, his tail low, his brown eyes filled with something that looked disturbingly like urgency. By midday, they were genuinely unsettled. Bear had always been gentle, always been good with the baby. But this felt different. This felt like something was very, very wrong. So they did what any modern parent would do. They pulled up the baby monitor footage. What they saw on that screen changed everything, and not just for them. When they posted the clip online, it went viral almost instantly, racking up millions of views in less than 48 hours. News outlets picked it up, animal behaviorists started weighing in, and the comment section exploded with a single stunned response. How did that dog know? This is the story of Bear, Emma, and the extraordinary bond between a dog and the tiny human he was determined to protect, no matter what. A family complete. Sarah and David had adopted Bear from a rescue shelter 3 years before Emma was born. He was a 2-year-old golden retriever with a torn ear and the kind of eyes that make you feel immediately understood. They had no idea in that moment just how important he was going to become. When Sarah became pregnant, friends and family offered all kinds of warnings. Make sure the dog doesn't get jealous. Golden retrievers can be unpredictable around babies. You might have to rehome him. Sarah and David listened politely, smiled, and ignored every single word. They knew Bear. They knew his temperament, his gentleness, his almost unnerving sensitivity to human emotion. When Sarah cried during her first trimester, overwhelmed, exhausted, hormonal, Bear would quietly lay his head on her lap and stay there for hours. When David had a stressful week at work, Bear would follow him from room to room like a furry shadow, never demanding attention, just present. So no, they were not worried about introducing Bear to the baby. If anything, they were excited to watch it happen. And when Emma arrived, small and red-faced and impossibly perfect, Bear's reaction was everything they had hoped for. He approached the baby blanket with the slow, deliberate caution of someone who understood the weight of the moment. He sniffed once. He looked at Sarah. Then he lay down on the floor beside the crib and didn't move for 3 hours. From that day on, Bear took his self-appointed role very seriously. He was not just a pet anymore. He was a guardian. The morning everything changed. Emma was 4 months old when it happened. She had been sleeping well, eating well, showing all the signs of a healthy, thriving infant. The previous night had been peaceful. No unusual fussing, no disrupted sleep. David had even commented over coffee that morning that they were finally getting into a good rhythm. Then Bear started acting strange. It began around 9 a.m. Sarah was folding laundry in the next room when she noticed Bear wasn't in his usual spot by the back door. She found him standing at the crib, nose pressed through the slats, making a low, steady whimper she had never heard him make before. She checked on Emma. The baby was asleep, breathing normally, cheeks flushed in the way babies' cheeks get when they're warm and comfortable. Nothing seemed wrong. Sarah gently pulled Bear away, gave him a biscuit, and went back to the laundry. 20 minutes later, he was back. This continued for hours. By early afternoon, Bear's behavior had intensified. He wasn't just whimpering now, he was pawing softly at the side of the crib, and each time Sarah or David came close, he would look at them with an expression that both of them, separately, would later describe as desperate. "It was like he was trying to tell us something," Sarah said in the interview she later gave to a local news station, "and we just weren't hearing him." Finally, David suggested they check the baby monitor. Not just the live feed, the recorded footage from overnight. What they saw made Sarah's stomach drop. What the camera revealed. At 3:17 a.m., the monitor footage showed Emma in her crib, still and quiet as expected. But at 3:22 a.m., something subtle and terrifying became visible. The baby's color began to change. A slight pallor, a faint bluish tint around the lips. Emma was not breathing normally. The episode lasted for approximately 40 seconds before Emma shifted position and her breathing normalized. She didn't cry, she didn't wake up. It was the kind of thing a sleeping parent, a deeply, exhaustedly sleeping parent, would never have known was happening. But Bear had known. Somehow, at 3:22 in the morning, Bear had woken up in his bed across the room and gone directly to the crib. The footage showed him pacing, pressing his nose to the slats, watching Emma with intense focus for nearly an hour before returning to his bed, only to come back again when Emma's breathing became irregular a second time, briefly, just before dawn. He had been monitoring her all night, and when morning came and the adults were awake and going about their routines, Bear had done the only thing he could. He stayed at that crib and refused to leave until someone paid attention. Sarah and David took Emma to the pediatrician that same afternoon. Tests confirmed what the footage had suggested. Emma had a condition called infant apnea, brief, involuntary pauses in breathing that are not uncommon in young babies, but can, in rare cases, become dangerous. With the right monitoring equipment and a few adjustments to her sleep environment, the risk was manageable. Emma would be completely fine. But without Bear, without a dog who refused to be ignored on a Tuesday morning, the outcome might have been very different. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to read it today. Stories like Bear's remind us that love doesn't always speak in words. Sometimes it paces, whimpers, and refuses to give up. Pass it on. The science behind the sixth sense. When the story went viral, it didn't just pull on heartstrings, it sparked a genuine scientific conversation. Animal behaviorists, veterinarians, and researchers began offering their explanations for what Bear had detected, and what they said is nothing short of remarkable. Dogs possess a sense of smell estimated to be between 10,000 and 100,000 times more powerful than humans. They can detect changes in body chemistry that are completely invisible to us. Shifts in hormones, blood oxygen levels, skin temperature, even the chemical compounds that the body releases during physical distress. Several experts suggested that Bear may have detected a change in Emma's scent during her apnea episodes, a drop in oxygenation that produces distinct chemical markers. Dogs trained as medical alert animals are regularly taught to identify these kinds of signals in people with epilepsy, diabetes, and cardiac conditions. But Bear had never been trained for anything like this. He simply noticed. He simply cared. Dr. Alexandra Horowitz, a dog cognition researcher and author widely respected in the field, has written extensively about the depth of dogine perception. The scientific community has increasingly come to recognize that dogs do not merely react to their owners. They actively observe, interpret, and respond to human physiological states in ways we are only beginning to fully understand. What makes Bear's story so striking is that he didn't just notice something was wrong, he communicated it, persistently, creatively. He used every tool available to him, his presence, his movement, his voice, his eyes. He had no words, but he found a way. That, many experts agree, is not instinct alone. That is something that looks very much like love. Dogs and babies, rethinking the relationship. Bear's story has become, for many people, a touchstone in an ongoing conversation about how we think about the animals we share our homes and lives with. For generations, the dominant cultural narrative has been one of caution. Dogs are animals, animals are unpredictable, and babies are vulnerable. Keep them separated, watch them constantly, be ready to rehome the pet if necessary. There is wisdom in that caution, of course. Not every dog is Bear. Proper introductions, training, supervision, and an understanding of individual animal temperament are all genuinely important. No story, however heartwarming, should be used to dismiss the need for basic safety awareness. But stories like Bear's also push back against a reductive view of animals as creatures operating on pure instinct, incapable of emotional nuance or genuine attachment. The evidence, both scientific and anecdotal, increasingly suggests otherwise. There are now hundreds of documented cases of dogs alerting families to fires, gas leaks, seizures, strokes, and yes, infant medical emergencies. There are service dogs who visit hospitals and seem to understand, somehow, which patients need comfort most. There are service dogs who have de-escalated PTSD episodes before the humans they serve even recognize the signs themselves. What Bear did was extraordinary, but it was not, it turns out, entirely unique. It was an amplified, high-stakes version of something dogs do for their humans all the time. They pay attention, they show up, they refuse to look away when something matters. Emma and Bear today. Emma is now a healthy, spirited toddler who, according to her parents, has a particularly intense fondness for golden retrievers. She has no memory of that Tuesday morning, of course. She was only 4 months old. But in some ways, she is surrounded by its legacy every single day. Bear still sleeps near her room. He still watches over her with a quiet attentiveness that visitors find remarkable. He has never repeated the frantic, all-day vigil of that February morning, perhaps because Emma's condition was treated, or perhaps because the family now has the proper monitoring equipment in place and Bear understands, in whatever way dogs understand things, that the situation is being managed. Sarah says she thinks about that morning often. She thinks about how close she came to brushing it off completely, to chalking Bear's behavior up to mood, or attention-seeking, or just dog weirdness. She thinks about what might have happened if she and David hadn't decided to check the footage. "He saved her life," Sarah said, simply, in the interview that has now been watched by millions of people around the world. "I don't know how else to put it. He saw something we couldn't see. He held on until we listened, and Emma is here because of it." David, for his part, is taken to leaving an extra biscuit in Bear's bowl every single morning. It's a small thing, a silly human thing, but it is the only language he has to say what Bear already knows. "Thank you. I see you. We would not be whole without you." What Bear teaches us. At its heart, this is not a story about a dog, or rather, it is not only a story about a dog. It is a story about paying attention, about the people and creatures in our lives who are trying, in whatever way they can, to tell us something important, about the danger of dismissing what we don't immediately understand, and about the kind of love that doesn't ask for anything back, that just shows up every single day and does the work. Bear didn't make the news because he was a hero. He made the news because he was persistent and patient and devoted enough to keep trying long after most creatures would have given up. He made the news because one family was wise enough to finally stop and listen. How many times in our own lives are we the ones not listening? How many signals do we miss because we're busy or tired or certain that we already have the full picture? How many people or animals in our lives are pacing at the crib, trying to tell us something we haven't been still enough to hear? Bear's story went viral not just because it was sweet or because it had a happy ending. It went viral because it touched something deep and true. The knowledge that love, real love, does not give up. It stays, it watches, it whimpers and paces and presses its nose through the slats until finally somebody looks. Did this story touch your heart? Share it with someone who loves dogs or who needs a reminder today that some kinds of love are simply beyond words. And if you have a pet who has ever seemed to know something you didn't, drop your story in the comments. The world needs more bear stories.